March 1st, 2023 Finance Board meeting, and the first item on the agenda is our...
Everybody's mics are muted. Sorry.
I'll start again. Sorry about that.
I didn't catch that.
So we now have a quorum, so it is 5:08, and I'm going to call the March 1st, 2023 Finance Committee meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda is our budget review meeting with the library. And our director of the library is here, along with many members of their Library Board of Trustees. So welcome. And what we do in this meeting is we go over the budgets and we don't make any decisions. We just review all of the budgets with everybody, so then we can later have discussions and make decisions on our recommendations vis-a-vis the rest of the requests from the town. And has everybody met with all of us already in the past? We have another new member, Alex Woods. He's not here tonight, and Bill O'Neill is running a little bit late. But I'm Ruth Rivard, Jim Scanlon,
Sarah McGrath.
Melissa Baker.
so. So do you want to start, Darcy, and just go over what's been going on with the library or
Oh, sure.
introduce your trustees or whoever else wants to present the budget, however you guys want to go about doing it?
Sure. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am Darcy Lepore, the library director, and I will introduce the library trustees first.
Thank
just
you.
to get that. So we have Laurel Pahalski, we have Robert Downey, we have Lee Thomas over there, we have Mary Lou Costello, and we have Jan Dempsey. They're all very lovely, supportive trustees.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Prunier on
Kathy
telephone.
Prunier is on the video, even though we can't
Somewhere
see
here
her.
on telephone. I don't know.
No, she's on
Yeah,
the phone now.
she's on the phone. Perfect. Yes. Okay. So, so as far as what's going on with the library, our big focus lately is just doing a ton of programming, especially focusing on literacy for young children, because I think for a while we had some turnover with the youth services position and we weren't as focused on that. We had lower numbers for programming for a while, but now our new youth services librarian, I don't know who here has met her, Bergen Daly. She is dynamic. So
How long ago did she start?
she started in August. Yes, the end of August. So that is one of our goals, to strive to do more in introducing literacy to children.
Had the pleasure of meeting Bergen. She's lovely.
She's lovely.
Lovely. She's very, very nice. Yeah, she's great.
It's true. So that's been our main focus. So do you think, since I know we have a lot of lines here, so do you think we should just go sections, lines? There are a few things I do think I should explain in terms of the salary numbers, because it looks higher than it actually is. It's complicated, so I should explain that.
Why don't you start there?
Yeah, I know.
Start with
I
the
know.
complicated stuff.
Yeah, I know. You all love to hear that. So we hired Bergen at 2147, which was originally not what was budgeted for. It was a typing error, and then she signed on before I could say, hey, it's actually 2047. So, obviously I couldn't take that back. So her salary increase here looks higher than it actually is compared to what she's getting. So factored into what she's getting already, this is a 2% increase. So if that makes sense.
So you're basing it off of the 2147, not the 20, even though we budgeted. That's why it looks like.
Yes, because of course, it wouldn't actually be a 2% increase if we did it based on the 2047. So that's why. And then the other part is that the adult services librarian has pretty much the same position as the youth services librarian, except it's, obviously youth services versus adult services. Our adult services librarian is currently making less due to that error. So we did an adjustment based on that. She's been with us for 7 years. So I put them at an equal amount so that we can go forward and do whatever we need to do from there. But that's why, it looks like, Bergen's increase is much more, and then it looks like Sue's increase is, higher because it's more of an adjustment. So I can answer any questions about that, but everybody else, obviously I did what I needed to do with the directions. The pages, it's also a little strange because they increased to $15 January 1st because of the minimum wage increase. So then that all got factored into their 2% for this coming year. So ClearGov might say 3%. It is 2% though. Yeah, so I can answer any questions about that.
Darcy, can I jump in? Bob Downey. We read,
Mike, come to the mic.
yeah, we read the Collins report with a lot of interest, and it was a lot of detail, and
If you
We-
want to just sit over there, you can take this
Okay.
mic, right? There's no reason.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
or the handheld.
Yeah, just
either
sit
one
down,
works.
hang out with us.
Oh, okay.
And I think we need your help. There's a conundrum, and for people who like to think like me, it means damned if you do, damned if you don't. We are restricted by the salary structure in what we could offer new hires. So we have a situation, and Darcy went over very well the youth director, and if we had to stick with equal pay for our long-term employee, we probably would not have been able to hire that person. So I think we pretty much settled that, but going forward, what would your advice be from that? In my personal opinion, we want to get talent, and we don't want to lock in a low pay scale and miss out on future talent. So maybe not for this meeting, but we have a problem when we go to hire.
And retention too is important.
Right. Yeah. We acknowledge that.
Okay.
And we understand that. The first step, in my opinion, to addressing that overarching situation was to change our town structure to have a town administrator. Because well, I'm speaking personally on behalf of myself, not the entire board. But I have been on the board for 7 years, and I've had these discussions, and I've seen the pattern, and, we just have limited resources. So the first step, in my opinion, like I said, was to get a town administrator in place. The second step was to move forward with the wage and classification study, and to do it comprehensively, and to do it through a third party, like the Collins Center, like we did, to try to mitigate. I know compensation, it's an important thing, it's a personal thing. People spend their time, and they want to be acknowledged for that, and I totally get that. But what we tried to do, I personally supported the compensation study so that we could have it done not subjectively, to have it done professionally, to have a thorough, well-researched study done. That was the second step. The third step is trying to get there, trying to implement that study through the limited resources that we have. And that's going to be an ongoing, unfolding thing. I think our town administrator is working hard to try to balance the wants and the needs of the town. But I think that for the first time, I personally feel like we are really taking proactive steps to get there. So it is something that we hear, we acknowledge, we know it's important. We value everybody's input, everybody's volunteerism. We sit on this board because we appreciate our town and our town's employees and our town's residents, and we too want it to be a better place to be. So we're getting there, we're putting steps in place, and we're going to have discussions about it. And we will, again, this is just a listening, so I appreciate your input, and we will sit down and go through our recommendations and our priorities. But we're hoping that we're moving in that direction, and we're hoping that we get there.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. So did anybody have any questions about all of that, or I can move on to the expenses, which isn't too complicated. So that's easy.
No, I think it's very straightforward now that you explain it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I needed an explanation. So for the expenses, library materials is usually slightly higher than the 2%. That's because of Mass General Law. We have to make that 19% of the previous fiscal year's total amount that we get from the town every year.
You know,
Yeah, I know, you know. Just
we appreciate the calculation, though. Thank you.
yes, and of course, anybody might be watching at home that does not know.
I know.
So technology programs, we level funded those. The dues actually decreased because usually the dues include our e-content. So e-content is anything we contribute to Overdrive. It's the amount that we're mandated to contribute to Overdrive. So I'm actually going to be using the library materials fund for that. So that will actually save money. So I thought that was a smart choice.
And
A smart choice.
appreciated.
Yes. Training level funded, and then supplies, we just increased a little bit. As much as I would love to have an infinite amount for supplies, we are already out for this year. We tried to keep it at that 2% increase. So that's what we did for our numbers. But, of course, with our materials, we are focusing a lot on the e-content and the things people can find digitally. We still have all of our physical items, but we're always adapting to the changing times. And you can see that with our programming as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have not been on your website recently, but you produce a calendar of events. Okay,
Yeah.
so like the COA does,
Yes.
so someone can see what's going on.
Yes, and you'll see we have an event almost every weekday and some Saturdays as well.
It sounds like you need up-to-date equipment in the technology side.
We could always use up-to-date equipment, but we also there are some ways that I can acquire the equipment that patrons use, because we can use a little bit of materials money for that. But on the other side of it, the stuff that we use, in a few years, I'm sure we'll need to update those computers, and that doesn't come out of town funds usually. But of course, we're not asking for that this year, so. Those are good questions. Any other questions? Happy to answer anything.
Yeah, real quick. You say
Yes.
you've already run out of supplies for fiscal 2023?
Yes, so ink and book covering material, those are the culprits. Those, if we order maybe 15 rolls of book covering plastic, that's going to be like $400 or more. So, and then ink, $100 or more for a cartridge. And, we're always printing things out. So that's why.
All the, how many printers do you have?
We have one for the staff, we have one for the patrons, and we have a copy machine. The copy machine, actually, we have a contract through the company that we bought it from. So that ink isn't actually costing us really extra, but those are the three that we have.
So it's basically the two other printers.
Yeah, especially the staff one, because color ink as well will run a little bit higher. Yeah. Yeah, because we have, what? Oh, he has a comment.
I tend to speak too much sometimes. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but do you have any ideas for new technology? Because I have one. Maybe we're not aware that the library is the repository of military history. We just came into it maybe about a year ago, and right now it's in big binders like that, and there is always a possibility to microfilm it or somehow digitize it, which means a staffing expense, an equipment expense, but
If it's historical, then
it's historical,
then you
but
can go to the Capital Preservation Committee.
Okay.
And write a
Okay.
request. We're
But-
done for this year, but you can put one in for next year.
Okay,
If it's
super,
historical,
super.
We also have one.
Hmm?
We have one.
We have-
Digital,
Yeah.
digitization one.
Okay,
so that's a
Thank you
good
for
place
that.
to do that. Now, if you need hardware to support that effort, I would put that in the request too. So there is, and the good news is, there's a lot of money in that fund.
oh, that is good
And,
news.
yeah, the community preservation. So that's what I was going, when I asked for the microphone back. I was going to add to, when you were saying earlier, like, what is the library doing? I
Yes.
did want to mention the Bob Guptill collection. I guess that's what we're calling it right now.
Yes.
We have been gifted, well, do you want to go with it? Go with it.
It's like Bob said, a lot. So 4 U-Haul boxes of 3-inch ring binders, chock full of military history and biographical information.
From
It's-
Groveland.
From Groveland, people who are from Groveland who fought or are buried in Groveland. So it's super, super fascinating. There's also actual historic original documents in it, as well as things that are printed out from heritage websites. So it's an interesting mix. It's not prepared yet. We're working with a local citizen, Bill Newell, to actually index it first. But yeah, it's been quite interesting to look through, and we're excited to allow patrons to eventually see it once it's available. It's because it is really good. It's
And we have been.
extensive.
And we have been working through the past couple of years. We had received a grant for preserving our historical
Yes.
information. I don't think it was knowing we were getting this collection, but gifted this collection. But it is something that the library also does, that people might not know, and we're really trying to preserve, instead of putting them in cardboard boxes down in the basement. We're preserving these things.
Yeah, of course. We're here
yeah,
for the
right.
patrons. That's what it's for.
Right, so that people can do
Everything-
that.
That's what our
And-
materials are for. Everybody
also,
in the Commonwealth.
Getting back to Bergen, our youth youth services librarian. She has just applied for a grant that we're hoping, so that would get a lot of STEM. I don't know if you know what STEM, science, technology, okay. Materials, things, engineering, math, because she does a lot of that and open-ended experiences along with her literacy. I mean, someday go to see one of her children's programs. They are fantastic. They really are. I'm blown away by them. And so hopefully she'll get that grant. And, I mean, I think everyone, all the staff at the library are trying the best to find other ways to get money, find other ways to use that money, or, you know, there's not a penny wasted over there, believe me.
Or to cut
And
costs.
what did
Or
what?
to cut costs.
Oh, yes, to cut costs,
So-
right.
Yeah, like in the
The-
dues.
The copy machine is free of charge.
The,
Contract.
we signed the
I mean,
contract.
to the patrons.
Oh, so we,
Like, when I go to the
Do-
Boston Public Library, they want me to put in a nickel or a dime for every copy or something.
no, so what we do is for printing and for copying, the first 10 pages are free. And that usually covers what people want. So,
I think that's wise.
Yes.
So people aren't using it as their
Now,
free
your other two
copier.
Instead
printers,
of printing at home or,
color ink is much, much more expensive than black and white.
yes.
Is there, like, some kind of policy on, we only use color on presentation documents, et cetera, something like that? Everything else must be black and white to cut the costs?
Yeah, pretty much the staff, it's more of a procedure, really. The staff know not to use color for, you know, reasons that aren't for presentation.
And the other copier for patrons, I don't believe is color, is it?
It does have that capability, but then we do charge a little bit,
Yeah.
the 25 cents.
For color, yeah.
For color.
I thought so, yeah.
Are they laser printers?
Yes, yes.
I just want to say, totally off topic of your budget, it's so nice to have a meeting where people are so excited about what they do. It was just really nice. Like, hearing you say, I was like, oh, maybe I'll go tomorrow, like, to the program. Like,
should.
it's just really nice. I just wanted to comment that.
Thank you,
It's
Sarah.
very nice.
Yeah, I love being the librarian, I have to say.
And the adult programs are just wonderful. I mean,
Yeah, consistently
yeah.
interesting.
Friday
and-
afternoon. Lee Thomas is doing something next week. That's up at Nichols Village. But in coordination, we also have a coordination with Nichols Village.
Yeah. Also, I do want to say our adult programs have been a lot more accessible. We've been doing hybrid programming. So we have been Zooming and recording programming to show on the local access channel. So anybody who might be homebound or just can't travel for a reason, they can view our programming too. And
So if there's any patrons that are watching this, what is the easiest way for people to connect to the library or to learn about offerings, programs? Is the web, do you want to talk about the
Yes.
website? And is there a calendar that's published? Is there a way on the
Yes.
website that they can get information to
Yes.
them?
And
What-
register
So-
for programs.
What would you recommend?
our website is langleyadamslib.org. Lib. Yes. So if anybody goes to that website, you'll see calendar of events at the top, and you just click that. It'll bring you to a very nice looking, easy to use calendar of events. And you'll see different items. Kids programs have the ages listed or grades listed. You'll see Monday night programs usually, or Friday afternoon programs for adult programs. We have book clubs, but it's very easy to register on the calendar. Very easy. Yes, and then you get an email confirmation and reminders also. So,
And you can order books through that website as well.
yes, yes.
So you can order and they'll notify you when your book is in.
Yes, I invite anybody to just peruse the website, play with the resources. There are a lot of items there.
Book recommendations.
Yes, we have a book recommendations blog as well.
Technology help? Don't I see that?
Yes, we have a library assistant that you can make an appointment with for technology help. Yes.
I remember last year, at your presentation, I think maybe it was Lee, talked about the library being thought of as more a cultural center, that you really
Yes.
try to reach out and put in a
Yeah.
lot of programmings, and so.
Monday night knitting with Laurel.
Yes.
There you go. I mean, there are lots of other things that happen there. It's not just book
Yeah.
reading, so.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to, say, put on an event, would they contact you?
Yeah. Yes, you would contact me. We do have a meeting room policy, but it's always dependent on whether the room's available and if it fits the policy. Yeah.
So for example, somebody called up and say, once a week I want to give free piano lessons.
If they bring the piano.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, once a week they're not going to roll in a grand piano.
I was going to say that would be ambitious.
But I mean, could they contact you and maybe set something up? I mean,
Yeah.
some people like to do things like that. They just don't know how.
Yeah, if the room's available, we could try setting something up. Yes. Yeah.
I know Girl Scouts have met at the library, and so,
Yeah. It never hurts to ask.
all right. Well, thank you all for
Yeah, thank you,
supporting
everybody.
the library and the town, and for taking the time to come tonight to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for hearing us out, listening to us. Okay. So you want me to leave this on for now? Just,
It's almost meeting you.
I have to go see Sean.
Bob Downey.
Investing that money you had, right?
Thank you all very much.
Your mic is on for whatever you guys are talking about.
Yeah, we have, finance secretary, and we have, an account.
It's all right. This is my favorite meeting of the year, so it's fine. As long as it's not me.
It's called Steel and Legal.
We're ready to start our next.
Oh. Let me leave.
So now our next department review is with Water and Sewer Department. We have Colin Stokes, who is the
Superintendent.
superintendent of the Water and Sewer Department. So you've met with all of us before. Do you know everybody here?
Yes.
So if you want to start by just talking a little bit about what has been going on in your department, and then just talk about the budget submission.
Yeah, so we got kind of a lot going on. We have
I like that. Tell me more.
we're in the middle of a large sewer project that's going over to Salem Street, tied in with the apartment complex that's going in over there. We got some water main work done on King Street, which is a big part of our future capital improvement plans. Is a good portion of that got done. We just wrapped up a water main replacement on Chestnut and Union Street. We're finally moved out of Town Hall. We're at our new location on School Street. Yeah, we're just kind of motoring along and looking at the next project and what that's going to be, and reinvesting the money that we collect back into the systems.
How's the new space?
It's great.
Just because there's more space?
We
Just
have more
because-
space. We're combined now with the crew. So myself and Heather and Mally are in the front part of the office, and then the operators are out in the back. So there's no more disconnect between, hey, we need this done, and trying to track someone down on the phone. I meet with them every morning, so I know where they're at, what they're doing, if there's something specific that I need them to do. It's a lot smoother having everyone in the same building.
That makes a lot of sense.
But outside of that, I mean, our budget is I feel like it's pretty basic. Costs go up. Outside of that, I mean, I think, I don't know anyone else that's submitting a budget with only a 0.12% increase. You're welcome. Having said that, that number is going up because it does not take into consideration the short-term debt that we're still waiting to hear about. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Ellen, but the bond anticipation notes for Union and Chestnut Street, so the job that we just completed, essentially the money we borrowed isn't a big enough number that someone wants to buy the bond. So for up to 3 years, we can kind of float it out there and just pay interest on it. So the short-term interest, short-term debt line on this budget only shows for Union and Chestnut Street. We have a warrant article coming to town meeting to drill a new well. So that number will be added onto this. When I had to submit this, I didn't have that number yet, so it's not on there. So you will be getting an updated number. But, that being said, outside of spending money to improve things, I think this is a fairly reasonable budget. So we're not living above our means by any stretch of the imagination.
Why is retirement down?
That is an excellent question. Through a series of questions, we discovered that the water department had been paying more than our share of the retirement based upon the retired employees that collectively the town has. So our portion of the retirement payment has gone down on water and sewer.
So that's your portion. The town,
Took a larger portion.
Correct.
Good for him, bad for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another line that went down is, our bond and interest line. Every year, a little bit comes off of that as the note gets closer to being retired. But, yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. I don't know if anyone has any questions about what we're doing or in general, but.
I have a question. Oh, are we out of the drought when the weather gets better?
Yeah, so we did lift the water ban. The state has knocked the state drought task force knocked everyone down to just regular level, based upon the precipitation that we've gotten basically all winter, because we didn't get any before that.
Have we seen improvement in the water levels?
Yes, we have. That being said, we need it to keep raining, so that we don't have to go through that again.
As you know, nationally, that's a lot of areas are hitting disaster area.
Yeah, so we're, under normal circumstances, we're pretty okay with quantity. I didn't want it to get to the point where we didn't do a water ban and then all of a sudden there was no more water, because then the question is, why didn't you do anything beforehand? So we avoided that.
So Colin, I got a question. I love acronyms. What's SCADA? What's SCADA system? What is that?
So SCADA is think of it as the brains that runs all of the electronics that run all of our wells, all of our pumps, all the chem feed. It makes everything work, and it lets us monitor it. It runs all the alarm systems, so we know if, too much chemical got pumped in, if a door got left open, if the water tank is too low. It runs everything. Currently, right now, that system is based in Town Hall. Not the best setup, because we're no longer here. So we're looking to get that moved to our new facility. It will make using the system better. It will make protecting the system better. Along with that, all of the different sites in town run over radio frequency. So the actual hardware, the company doesn't exist anymore for the pieces that we have. So part of that is probably going to involve us having to replace those so that, moving forward, if you can't buy the parts anymore.
Well, yeah, it's obsolete.
Right, exactly.
We live in a
So,
world that's
unfortunately, the stuff we have still works, but
only for a
when
matter
one
of
breaks,
time.
and you can't, they're not interchangeable with different companies, so to replace one, you replace them all.
And the software is,
Yeah, the software, it works, but,
It's like having a dial-up phone.
exactly.
You get an estimated ballpark cost on what it's gonna run to upgrade that to,
I don't have that in front of me, but I think the SCADA project was estimated around 500, maybe? 500,000
500.
to do the whole thing, move everything, rebuild stuff, upgrade the software. And then, so that, excuse me, that project we're gonna do out of retained earnings. So that one, that's money we have in the bank. Another warrant article that we're putting forward is, we're actually mandated, everyone in the country is mandated to catalog and list all of the different water services that you have in your town to make sure that you don't have any lead pipes left. So we have to go through and list every single house in town, every single building in town, and what type of piping feeds their house.
How do you have that information?
We're fortunate that we have some of it, and we're a fairly small town. For instance, Gloucester, they have none of it, and they need to do a lot of work to get it. But unfortunately, it's mandated, so we have to do it. On the bright side is, DEP is running a grant program, so we have to spend the money, but then we're gonna get it back. So we have to front about $150-something thousand of our own retained earnings to accomplish the first phase of the process, and then DEP will give us the money back.
You'll get it back.
Yeah. The grant program is supposed to open up starting this month. But obviously, we can't act on it until we get the money appropriated at town meeting.
Are you able to make an assumption that houses built or piped after a certain point in time are?
Initially, yes, you can. For phase one, you can make certain assumptions, but that's just phase one. Eventually, you have to go out and, we're gonna be getting into everyone's house, into everyone's basement. We might be digging holes in people's yards to see what they have in their yard, because there's two parts, so that we own from the water main in the street to the shut-off in your front yard. The homeowner owns from that shut-off into the basement. So we have to catalog both parts of that.
so even town side has lead.
So Groveland's lucky in the fact that in the 80s, they went through and removed a lot of what's called a lead gooseneck, so the actual lead piece of pipe that would connect the water main to the water service. All of those have been removed, but there's still some iron pipe services that feed into houses, which according to DEP and EPA are considered to be contaminated with lead potentially, because the lead gooseneck was connected to it at one point, and they feel like it could have leached into and attached itself to the inside of the steel pipe.
And all the houses on their own wells are exempt from all of this, which is like
Not my problem.
40% of the, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so, for instance, out where you live, you probably have plastic, so you probably don't have to worry about it. But, yeah, so I mean, that's a fairly large task that we have to undertake.
Is there a time frame?
There is, we're gonna beat it, but, I think we
It's
have.
years.
Yes, phase one, I think we have like a year and a half to do it or something like that.
Wow.
But it's not really an option, we have to do it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one other question. The sewer,
Mhm.
the Haverhill Capital Bond, the note says, or under the detail, figured at 4%, number given by Haverhill, but the
Mhm.
percent increase column says just 2%.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
So
Just
the
make sure that-
4% note is, we're in a kind of a drawn-out process of renewing our intermunicipal agreement with Haverhill. So we currently pay them based on how much flow we send them, and a third party tests the water, and we pay based upon suspended solids and BOD. So a few different parameters we pay on, and we pay based on flow. And we pay, our old contract, we paid 3% of capital projects that Groveland would affect. The new agreement is gonna be, we pay 4% of that capital amount. So this 4% is just noting that that figure is calculated based upon that 4% of Haverhill's number. And the 2% just indicates it's a 2% increase from last year's
oh,
number.
okay. So 4% is more like the base. It's
4% is,
calculated.
we're paying 4% of Haverhill's number.
Gotcha. Okay.
And those, we don't want to get into treating our own wastewater, so 4%'s a bargain.
Am I kidding?
4% is way better than 100%.
Your water, after you did the work on Governor's, you put in the new pipes and things, is the water quality, have you heard from the residents, has it got better? I know a lot of them were getting just, like, it was.
Yeah, honestly.
Drinkable, but it wasn't,
The problem is, and this is I had this conversation with a million people. You're pulling water out of the ground that has a lot of minerals in it, and you're not doing anything about it. So it's never gonna go away. We're looking for a new well to hopefully get water that has less minerals. But if you continually pump the same high mineral content water out of the ground,
It's like a $20 million solution.
yeah, and we could build a water treatment plant for $20 million, and myself and Rebecca have looked for assistance with that funding. But $20 million is a lot of money for 20,000 water and sewer customers to pay.
that's only to build it.
Yeah.
That's not to maintain it.
No, I mean, so we had a whole study done, and it would add about $150,000 a year to operate it, and I think that might have been another employee to staff it. And would it be great? Absolutely. Can you guarantee that it's going to solve all your water problems? No. There's plenty of cities and towns that have filtration, and you still get scattered dirty water. It's just, it happens.
Now, GE used to do something called the BOO, build, own, operate.
Mhm.
They would build it, they would own it, and they would operate it. And they would charge the municipality so much per, metric liter or whatever. You ever looked into that
I have not.
may be an option?
Uh,
Like Governor's has
Governor Dummer or something, yeah.
a similar treatment plant over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to ideas, but I'm not really open to bringing a third party in, because you don't have any, I would have no control over that. So, if someone's gonna be doing that, it's not gonna be me. I think a better option, outside of spending $20 million and hoping for the best, drilling a new well that has better water quality is certainly cheaper. We can retain the ability to operate it ourselves and have control over it, and, you know, the only problem with that is you know, you can drill a new well, it could be great for 5 years, and then you could have just as much minerals. That's what you get with groundwater.
Untreated groundwater is always gonna
Yeah.
be susceptible to the same.
Yep. So we have found large quantities of groundwater through some previous well exploration projects the last couple of years. So we've found water, we know it's there. Through some talks with DEP, we're gonna do a little more exploration before we kinda commit to a site. And then we'll see where we go from there, you know. Right now, we know we found a spot with like 1.5 million gallons a day capacity, which is fantastic. But DEP wants us to look, you know, do a little more homework. But we have a fallback plan. At the very least, you always want to know where your next water supply is going to be. You know, back in the day when Valley Screw happened and you had to shut wells down, you know, if you had a backup, if you knew where your next source was going to be already, it's less of a problem. So we're working towards that and trying to get some water with less minerals in it and make people happier, and that's it. Not spend $20 million.
I hear you. It's only the upfront costs.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Equipment is maintenance.
Equipment is maintenance of equipment. I don't know if it was last year or two years ago, we bought a backhoe with the highway department. We split it so that, you know, if something breaks or we need to change the oil or buy a new hydraulic line, covers equipment costs and repairs and anything that would be outside of the normal expense of, you know, wiper blades and stuff like that.
Sharing it hasn't been a problem.
No.
That's nice to hear.
You flatlined it, you think you can stick to that.
Should be okay, yeah. So,
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate the fact that even though there were some costs that were, you know, redirected, that you didn't try necessarily to say, here's my chance to.
yeah, I mean, I very well
that
could have
it's
just
pretty transparent.
went
and-
with the 2% and,
Yeah, yeah.
but, you know, I'd like to save that for when I actually need to do that, so.
Exactly.
It's
So,
be part
all
of
right.
the solution instead of the problem, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, we try. I like to be as responsible as I can be, so I have to pay a water bill too, so.
I don't,
Yeah, yeah. You got skin in the game.
Yep.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank your department for us, too.
I will.
Thank you. So we had earmarked 6 o'clock, but if we're running a little ahead of schedule, do you want to just start? Do you have anybody else come? Well, it's only 3 minutes now, I guess.
No, it's just me.
Sent you all along?
Yep.
His client base is quiet.
Brave soul.
Have you met with all of us? Do you know everybody
Yeah,
here at
pretty
this
sure, yeah.
point? I would think so.
Yep.
So, we've been through this now 3,
Fifth,
4,
This
5?
is the fifth one.
5 times. So, if you want to just start and just go over a little bit about what's been going on in your department and review maybe some initiatives or highlights of the year if you have them, if you choose to, whatever you want to do to promote your work, and if you want to just go over a little bit about the budget and any changes that may be in line, then we can talk about that.
You know, still working on all the records up at the cemetery. Now we're plowing the roads ourselves, opening more roads in the wintertime and keeping it nicer for people to come in during the wintertime. We added the fence along the New Bills property last year that really I've got a lot of compliments about. They think it looks nice. It keeps a nice delineation between the new house and our land, and
When you say they think it looks nice, you're
People that come
talking
in.
about the
people that come in, yeah.
into the cemetery, as opposed to the homeowners.
Yeah, the homeowner's great back there too. I mean, I get along good with them, but
That's
it
good.
looks good. It, like I said, it keeps it nice between both yards, really.
Yep.
But yeah.
Do you want to talk about replacing some of the roads in the cemetery?
Yeah, well, we're trying to work with the highway department to replace some of the roads. We got some in really bad conditions. I got a couple roads that some funeral directors won't even drive down with their hearse because they're very crowned. And just a lot of washouts because of the conditions in the roads. Just hoping to get some repair on them this year.
So do you have a plan, like a priority list or a?
I have a list of roads that are more impact than others. I gotta put a list together better of see what we can do and get with Rebecca and Rennie, and we were talking about trying to see what we can get to this spring.
Oh, and we already met with community preservation, and they talked about the work with cleaning up and
Yeah, we're getting
resetting.
the old section we wanna bring back to life a little bit. There's a lot of leaning. Well, they're leaning, they're broken, the stones don't look very nice, and we want to kind of fix them up, clean them up, get that section looking better, and that's going to help with that. I think it's about 200 stones, I think they said they can do in that little price range we got to start it off, and
And that'll be potentially one phase, and then
that'll be
you'll
one phase, and then we'll,
slowly
yep.
Try to keep
Try to
continuing.
do a little more. We started that 2 years ago, and last year, the company was just so busy, they didn't get to us to do, we can only do about 2,000 out of our perpetual care a year, just without hurting our budget too much, but,
But you're getting community preservation.
yeah, that's
funds
we want to do the old section, so,
oh, I see.
right in front there, because some of those are from the 1700s.
Question, how many burials did you do this year?
Per year, we do about 30 to 40.
30 to 40?
30 to 40 a year, yeah.
On sales?
Last year was slow. I think I only did about 8 to 10 new lots, but I was doing about 15 a year or so. Depends all how the year goes, really.
I think your perpetual fund doesn't have a lot of money in it.
Yeah, perpetual, we get the interest to use, so
Isn't it like only 18,000 in total?
something like that, yeah.
Keep on finding ways to use the CPC money.
Yeah, it's,
It sounds like you don't have any funds for capital improvement money
yep,
to fix those roads.
yep.
I mean, is there a lot of space left? Is there a lot of space left to?
I mean, we have the 2 new sections we opened.
Okay.
That's probably about 400 lots or so there's a good amount of lots in the 2 new sections we opened.
Good, okay.
And then we got old roads we can reclaim if we need to. There was a couple that they already have done, so.
This time of year, do people wait to open a, no? You still
No.
going?
Oh, yeah.
No, I see Acme Vault every day.
Oh, yeah, they're busy.
They're busy, busy, busy.
Excuse me, I saw, I don't know when the request, someone wanted to plant more trees in the cemetery?
Yeah, we were working with,
Why?
we were working with Jane Dempsey. She wants to donate a couple trees, so we're trying to figure out where we can do a couple trees she wants to donate, so.
I'm not big on trees. I spend a lot of money cleaning them.
Jim doesn't like trees.
Yeah,
Cleaning the
That's like-
leaves.
I'm kind of a beach guy, you know? Sand is good.
Except on a golf course.
Pretty flowering tree can bring a lot of interest and beauty to an
Ambiance.
area. Yep.
Number 4,
yep.
can you tie any of this into, like, what the library was talking about an hour or so ago? Historical records that maybe you can tap into those conservation resources through a historical kind of?
Yeah, a lot of our records probably historic. I mean, there are a lot of older records from 1800s and early 1900s. A lot of military and buried in our cemetery also, so, I mean, it probably can tie in somehow.
Because that's a resource that doesn't get tapped enough. And if you could tie that in, you could maybe help you out there with some
Yeah,
funding.
Well, I think that 4 and 6, right? I mean, the first house, right? I mean, both of them.
yeah, the Hearst House we were talking about, this, what was the guy's name to have him come look?
Which one, I'm sorry?
The Hearst House? Was it like-
Angelo
Yeah, we're gonna
Perizzelli.
have him come look at it and see if it's historical, can be preserved somehow or something, because that building's on its last leg.
What building is?
So when you come in along the rock wall, it's that first little building, it's called the Hearst House.
Mm.
That's been there a long time. I don't know the exact date on that, but that's been there a long time.
And
It's like a storage shed.
I believe Bob Guptill got software for who owns, he brought in a pile of paper saying these are the way the records look on who owns what and this and that. So we told him that he could go to the CPC. So I don't know if that software has ever been.
No, that software he had got was, we couldn't use it. They wouldn't upload the information we had, and they wanted, I think it was like $2,400 a year to maintain it. So this was back when Denise was here, we had canceled that software, just because the cost was way outrageous to
It was
outrun it.
funded by CPC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
overall,
quantum software.
unsustainable in the long run.
Yeah,
Okay.
the library was here first tonight, and they were saying that they have boxes from, I
yeah,
think-
from Bob, I heard that they got dropped off there.
And so they are also going through an archiving project, and
Yep.
they have some microfiche capabilities and
Yep.
what have you, so maybe any of that would be, if not coordinated, even interesting to know how they're navigating through that.
Yeah.
What's working, what's not, what's efficient, what's maybe duplicate
Yep.
and stuff.
It may be a collaboration, right, between
Maybe.
the library and the cemetery. Who knows? Something different.
So, anyone have any other questions?
Overall, I think his budget requests are
For
extremely reasonable.
machinery, you got a new mower last
Yeah,
year?
we hit them all last year. Yeah, all we're putting in is the little bit for fuel, but that's with the rising cost of fuel and.
And a second mower.
Yep, second mower, and now we know the budget for the truck with the plowing and everything, so we're getting a better feel for the fuel.
Because the truck was also,
Last year was the first winter with it, so we weren't sure how much fuel extra we'd use with
that
plowing.
was ARPA funds, bought the truck to
Yes.
do the plowing? Is
Uh,
that-
No, that was a, capital. That was a capital.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much. I'm not really in the cemetery often. I don't go in, I don't see it. But I know I hear from other people in town that they do, that it has been really improved. I know you've been doing a lot of projects, and so we appreciate that.
Yep.
I spend all my visiting at the Elmwood Memorial. Where my family is, so. Well, thank you very much.
All right,
We
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the work you do.
And then we have Council on Aging scheduled for 6.
Do we want to
Really?
early because they're here?
If they're here and they'd like to, then that's fine with me. If it's at 6:30 and they want to wait until that time, then
No. Well, if the
so, first we may as well take care of minutes.
Can you just say that again? I had you muted.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so sorry.
So I was just commenting that the Council on Aging is scheduled to come in at 6:30, which is 20 minutes away, and they want to wait until that scheduled time. So we'll conduct some other business, skip ahead in the agenda, and we may as well take care of meeting minutes. There were two minutes that we need to review. Do you want to go over the one that?
Yeah, the first one that we distributed was for the January 18th meeting. We distributed that. I had one comment back from Ruth, just the grammatical, used the wrong.
Spell check.
Spell
Change
check.
Conservation to conversation.
But did not get any other comments back on it.
Move to accept January 18th, 2023 minutes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
All right.
I think Jim was.
Were you not at that
me.
one?
Jim was not at.
Then I can't vote.
Abstention.
Yes.
Okay. Then the second one was for February 1st, 2023. I didn't get any comments back. So,
Move to accept February 1st, 2023 minutes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
I'll
You vote this time.
abstain, I wasn't here.
Now what?
Okay.
I'll also note that Pentucket, I sent an email out this afternoon just with those, just consolidating those minutes, the revision from the Council on Aging, and also a note that Pentucket Regional School District invited the 3 regional towns, town administrators, Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Committees, again, to a meeting next Wednesday, March 8th, at 6 o'clock at the middle high school, and that will be to review the budget. They expect the school committee to vote on their budget on the 7th. So I'll post it.
We already
as-
had a meeting scheduled. We did, separate.
And we
We had a placeholder meeting.
have
had a-
that
we
as a
had a placeholder
placeholder.
meeting.
Yep. So they officially requested it just a day or two ago. They expect, like I said, to vote on the budget the 7th, so there should be.
So what time is that, at 6, you said? So
Six.
we won't have our
So
meeting.
do we want to have a meeting
Correct.
here at 5 or there at 5 or?
I have a question. When are we gonna do the town administrator?
Tonight.
Got a lot of buckets here. So,
I imagine they did all this in a PDF too. Did this come in an Excel or PDF?
In PDF, it's scanned PDF,
You can what?
a scanned PDF.
A scanned PDF at that. Beauties. So,
So I'm going to post that meeting, and,
Are you going to post the, are we going to have a meeting before that at 5, just in case?
if we need to.
My thought is we're going to need to, right? I mean,
So why don't we have 15 minutes now. I mean, how many of the town administrator budgets? There are a lot of them, but they're
well, we could do a few now.
pretty straightforward
Selectmen
and
one.
cut and dry. I mean, I would think that we could do,
it's gonna take long.
if we want to,
Do you want to hear an update on the revenue numbers?
Yep.
So the governor released her budget the other day, and as they presented over to the Board of Selectmen, there were slight few increases, some not as pleasant as others. For the unrestricted general government aid, we're only looking at a 2% increase from 843 to about 860. The other increase that we received was from the veterans benefits of about 28% increase. And the other increase was from the state-owned land. That was the largest of the increases that we've seen over the prior years at about 15%. And that's attributed to the governor's push and initiative in order to revalue the state-owned land and assess it accordingly. So that was a nice jump from 182 to about $210,000. From the other side of things, so ultimately, our aid increased 5% from last fiscal year, and that preliminary release of revenue numbers. As typically seen, our charges then increased by 4%, so we're really looking at about a 1% increase in revenue numbers from the state this year. We did have a legislative breakfast with the Chiefs Association this morning that I was lucky enough to attend. And I think that there was a lot of initiatives that they talked about in terms of their legislation that they have and things that they would like to see passed from a police and public safety standpoint. But one of the things that I thought was really just quite brilliant, to be honest with you, is the chief of Merrimack actually stood up, and at one point he said, I know this is supposed to be focused around public safety, but I would like to focus this on Chapter 70. Because the way that your formula is distributed and the amount of money that we received from the Pawtucket School District was 0.51%. And that is going to result in the need for an override in our communities. And when we have to go through an override, that directly affects other budgets, not just the school, because then we need to come up with the additional monies and additional funds to be able to try and alleviate that burden on the residents. And that means that the other departments need to make those sacrifices in order to make that up. And it's about time that that stopped. And I think that that comment alone at a breakfast of that nature was kind of a wake-up call for some of the legislature. Granted, it's only the Essex County, but a lot of them are new legislators as well. But it was really interesting to see how that something like that impacts us as a whole, and no one really frames the issue like that. And I thought it was really great. So hopefully they will take that to heart and they will take it back when they review. They were in session today, so hopefully they will evaluate what they had put forward for those revenue numbers and help our communities out a little bit more. So just wanted to make sure that you understood where we were with the revenue numbers, and whatever budget you want to tackle, we can start there first. I don't know if you want to start with insurance. I don't know if you want to start with technology, the selectmen budget, my own budget.
I think you start with whichever ones are as straightforward and finalized and not, I mean, I don't know if any of these budgets are numbers that you expect may still need adjusting at all, or if you think that they're all final, but whatever we can get through, I would say we should just try to use the time efficiently.
So we can start just going down the list, to be honest with you, as we have it laid out in that initial sheet. So we'll start with the selectmen's budget. You'll see that the town audit is level funded. The consulting services, that's what we use to pay for our OPEB evaluation. We split it up into 2 fiscal years, so that will remain the same. The reserve fund is level funded. The association fees goes up a little bit in order to cover, to do a better breakdown of exactly how we pay our association fees, instead of putting it towards the expense line item, putting it towards the actual association. And that includes the finance board association fees that are paid to the MMA to be part of that. The other line item is for the town reports. That went up to $2,000. As you'll see in the past, it's typically $2,000. We adopted $1,850 last year, and I believe that actually doubled because we had to do 2 town reports in 1 year since they were not done. But it doesn't increase substantially, obviously, as you can see, from $1,850 to $2,000. The other one is for the minutes clerk. That was level funded, and then the expense line item was increased to accommodate for the additional expenses associated with getting all the licenses for the liquor licenses and certified mailings and legal postings for transfer of liquor licenses, etc. So that went up $1,000. For my budget, I'm proposing a 2% increase on my salary from last year, and then I'm looking to level fund the Education Association fees and office expenses. Does anyone have any questions about any of those particular line items?
Nope.
I would just like to say, maybe during these extraordinary times that we face, that, and I know they would probably do it themselves, maybe for this year, zeroing out that stipend line, moving it down into places like the elections, that's gonna cost more money, reallocating those funds to better places.
When we go through and when we started to put together the scenarios, they are removed in order to accommodate for other areas in the budget. For the department requested budgets, I just kind of level funded things where needed and only increased wherever it was necessary. But I definitely think it's worth discussing once we get into, all right, we don't have enough money here, where are we going to take it from? And maybe it is those stipends.
Town council would be?
Town council was level funded, so no changes there. So far this year, we've been in good shape. But it's nice to have those additional funds as things happen. And as we had noted when we were going through the discussion with the treasurer tax collector, She is doing a fantastic job moving ahead with some of the foreclosures and tax title lists and some of the legal work that's attributed to such as taking sometimes a little bit out of the town council line item in order to make up for some of the deficit that occurs within that line item. As we discussed at the last meeting, you are able to legally deficit spend that particular line item. So having that legal expense just remain level funded has been helpful in those specific situations.
I'm fine with that.
Technology, that is one that had jumped up significantly. Again, when we had our former finance director, she was great at doing the technology stuff. That's somewhat of her background. That's where she had started off in. So she was able to pick up a lot of the slack, and we had consultants come in and do some of the other, like ransomware and other types of things, troubleshooting and whatnot if needed. Now that she's no longer here, obviously, we don't have that technical expertise, so we had to call in and ask for our consultants to step up and take on some additional responsibility, including signing a life cycle management contract, which allows us to have brand-new computers that we lease through that company, and they come in and they take care of that, and that's a monthly expense. They also do Sophos, which is like our ransomware, malware type of stuff, in addition to some of our troubleshooting with our machines. That also takes into consideration all of our subscriptions. So we're talking about Vadar, we're talking about ClearGov, we're talking about the portion of Code Red that the town has to take care of, in addition to what the water and sewer. We're talking about our internet, and then we're also talking about any other types of things that come up from a technology basis. I know one of the things that increased the line item was that we're working to instead of being able to, unfortunately, not having enough monies to hire additional help in some of the offices, one of the solutions is working with our current software and allowing for departments to input their own invoices through our accounting and bill payable system, Vadar. And so one of the increases is about, I think it's like it's noted on your breakdown, about $3,000 to allow for licenses for a couple of other departments to actually physically input those invoices into the system. Therefore, we're not duplicating efforts with Ellen, and Ellen is not taking a paper form and then entering it into the system and then doing all of that additional work. So that will allow her to focus on other matters. Other communities do it. I mean, as Sean enters, I know that's something that they've done in Merrimack and other communities, and it's been really helpful. So hopefully we can continue on with that. But that's why you'll see those larger increases in the technology line item from what we have formerly funded.
Yep. Thanks for the breakdown. I really appreciate that. It's nice to see when it goes up that much, why it goes up. You know what
And if you don't have any other questions there, we'll stop there until we want to reconnect.
I mean? If I'm on it, sure.
Are you
Yeah.
sure? Well, is there any questions about the technology line item specifically, or
do
the
not have
breakdown, or
questions about
any concerns with
technology.
some of the things we're trying to do? So the next one would be down to the municipal buildings. You'll see that we're requesting the 2% for the custodial salaries. You'll see that the lawn and grounds is level funded. The public relations has gone up. We were not accurately reflecting that we were paying from multiple different line items from like the police and the fire side and then the town side, and it collectively made sense to hold it in one line item,
I
so.
thought that's what we did a couple years ago.
It wasn't reflected as that when we received the breakdown, but I can definitely double check into that and see what's going on. I don't know if their rates increased from the last time that you reevaluated it, but the latest invoice showed that, and that took care of everybody and excluded the water and sewer department, who has their own, pays their own portion. The biggest jump you'll see is going to be the utilities, like we're seeing everywhere. While we don't have National Grid for electricity, the GMLD is going up in their rates, so we will need to accommodate for such. And where we don't have them for National Grid for electricity, we do have them for gas, and those rates have increased, so we're looking to accommodate for the inflation increases in both of those. So that was one of the larger jumps within those particular, or that particular line item. That also includes our phone and internet. And then the next line item is the lease copiers. We have two of the copiers here in the building that is for all of the departments to use. We maintain those, we have a lease for those, and then we also supply the paper, toner, and materials associated with such. That's been level funded. The town decor, we increased because of the additional things that we've been doing from a community standpoint, with trying to partner with the Groveland Municipal Light Department and doing the lights down in the square from Pumpkin Fest and getting the scaffolding and some of the decor. So there's the reason that you'll see an increase there. The repairs and maintenance line item, we're only looking for about a $700 increase from where it is. Again, because of the supplies and the way things are costing more money, most other departments, and like the school, is just taking up a 5% increase. We have a great facilities coordinator who as frugal as can possibly be. He always finds the best of deals that you can possibly find, and if he can't get a deal, he usually makes us wait until he can find a better deal. So we really do have such a great support with Steve and all that he does for the town to cut costs. And so that's why we're looking to just increase it slightly, just to be realistic with some of those prices that are going to go up. And then the last line item within that particular division is for the supplies. And again, we tried to be reasonable with the request, and knowing that we try and be mindful of the prices, but they are going up, so there is going to be increases. So there's a $1,000 increase on that line item from the last fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you. So we were waiting until 6:30, just trying to go through some of our other budgets with the town administrator, trying to use our time efficiently. But now it's 6:30, so we will welcome back the Council on Aging. So just to give a little bit of background, you met with us on
The first, I believe?
the
I can
first.
step up.
Will
Want me
you,
to step up?
Yeah, sit down.
please do,
Hang
yep.
out with us.
Which was your, and
My
you can
second
turn your
day.
mic on.
That's right.
And it was, right, your second day of work. So the Council on Aging requested, now that you've been here for
3 weeks?
3 weeks, that you wanted to come back and review
You
the
wanna do
budget
it
during the
twice in
budget.
one
I
year.
did.
All right.
Why not, right?
No one ever says that.
I like Laurel's numbers better than yours.
Could've taken what you could get. Who's this guy?
So if you want to start, and you've met all of us.
I have,
Do you
yes.
meet everybody? So you may want to
I
just.
didn't meet
I
you.
was not here at that
Oh.
meeting.
I didn't meet you.
Sorry, I'm Melissa Baker.
Hi, Sean Cass. Nice to meet you.
She's our secretary / note taker
Excellent.
extraordinaire. And if you may want to just introduce yourself for the benefit of anybody that may be watching that doesn't know your.
Sure,
hasn't
Sean
met you yet,
Cass,
since you're pretty new.
new director for Council on Aging. I started about 3 weeks ago. So I did send over some information last night. I'm not sure if you all had a chance to take a look at it, but before we get into the actual numbers, I thought it would be good to just share a little bit about the performance of the department and some of what we are seeing in terms of trends over the last few years. You'll hear me use the term kind of pre-pandemic, post-pandemic quite a bit. Because in addition to tracking the numbers, a lot of the trends that we're seeing and observations that we're seeing relative to the department needs definitely have that pre-pandemic, post-pandemic construct. So I provided on the first page just a snapshot of 18 to 22, because I think the one thing that I noticed in the first few weeks that I've been here, I tend to be a numbers person, so I like to see kind of what's happening, where the department was, where it is today, and where it's going. So in the first week or so, that's one of the first things that I did. And we have a fantastic system, a CRM system of sorts called My Senior Center, so I'll talk a little bit about that in the budget. But it enables us to really track all of our information, which is important for annual reports and grant reporting and things like that. And what you have on the first slide on the left side is a snapshot of what I consider our reach and our engagement. The official definition by the vendor, My Senior Center, is unduplicated and duplicated. But what it really means in terms of our performance is, unduplicated is the people that we're reaching annually. So you have the individual people that come to our department for services versus what's in green, which is called duplicated. So I come to the department for services one time. If I participate in a variety of things, you're going to see that in the green bar there. And it's important because both of the numbers are important because one does, to me, is a good indicator of reach, which is the unduplicated, and then the duplicated is a good indication of their level of engagement with us. So how often do they come back? And when they come back, what are those services and connect points that they have? So what you're seeing is all of the connect points across the department, whether it's an event, a ride, a trip, outreach services, meals, various meal programs, and so forth, cumulative added up. And so that's typically how I think and how I tend to measure things, and what's great is that my senior center does that. Pre-pandemic, the department had a lot of momentum, and you can see that. So we are engaging with about 30%, 40% of the population, the 60-plus population in the town. In pre-pandemic, you saw things like events and entertainment and social gatherings on the rise. And then, of course, during the pandemic, that was replaced with outreach services and different things like that. So phone consultations because people weren't out and about. What is really great about what I'm seeing here is that the department was able to pivot and keep that momentum going up. So if you look at those numbers, basically what happened was the performance and the engagement in the department kept moving, but they just pivoted to different services that were offered. And I think that's really great because it shows that the staff was nimble and that they reacted to what was going on at the time. And then post-pandemic, our engagement numbers continue to rise, and then slightly in 2022, the reach dropped there just a little bit. And I think there's a number of factors for that. Post-pandemic, what we're seeing is there is a slower return to normal for seniors, and that's to be expected. But what's really interesting is that we are engaging with the same population essentially a lot more, which tells us that the services that we're providing and the needs that need to be met, that the department is doing as best as they can to try to meet those needs. There are a couple of challenges post-pandemic that that I've accounted for or tried to address in the budget, which is the post-pandemic needs from an outreach standpoint are more complex. So if you think about what they need in terms of services, programs changing that were introduced or created as a result of the pandemic going away, navigating all of those types of things becomes much more difficult. And so in the outreach space, for example, that has doubled. So we're basically meeting with the same number of people, but the time and the amount of times that we're interacting with them has doubled since 2018. That tells me that area is very complex, that they take longer, they have to come back more phone consultations, that sort of stuff. We have expanded our nutrition resources with the introduction of our pantry. In fact, I think today we had our highest day, which is good in that it's working, bad that people in the community need that much by way of services. But we also connect them to other programs throughout the community as well. So we work with about 4 other programs in addition to our pantry. And so the engagement levels across those programs have more than doubled. The reach has not, so we're not reaching as many people as we need to be. But what that's telling me is the people that we are reaching are saying, we need this is valuable, this is important. So, and as I mentioned with events and social programs, they were on the rise. And I think we can get back to that with some well-rounded programming post-pandemic and bring people out socially and have them interact. So we had probably one of our largest newsletter coalition events earlier this week, and everybody was happy to be out. So I think if I create, well-rounded programming, I think we can take that 668 and bring that back up to pre-pandemic levels. But what that tells me is I need to reach more people with different types of programming and also re-engage the people that are here that, have been too concerned about going outside. And then lastly, with our transportation and trips, in addition to our van, which we use as much as we can, we do offer and partner with additional free or low-cost transportation resources, whether it's NEAT or MEVA or what have you. And I will say that the department has been really good about pulling those levers. So what transportation resource makes the most sense for the need of the trip? So if it's medical or if it's a trip that we are providing, whether it's grocery shopping services or what have you, we keep all of those resources very, very busy, and we're constantly just kind of balancing them and juggling them across the department as needed. So I think that momentum will certainly continue as we go. Any questions about what you saw on that first page? Sure.
It's fresh in my mind because I had to help someone migrate. Do we have any expertise for Shine so we can help seniors with their health needs on insurance?
You asked that. So we were talking about that today.
Can you repeat the,
I can repeat it for you, sure.
because I'm sorry, I
Yep.
had a hard time hearing. So just tell us what you're talking about.
So the question was, do we have the resources needed for Shine, which is to help with insurance and what have you, with the different programs and available associated with medical and insurance and whatnot. You have to be certified to be to be part of Shine. It's a very lengthy process, and so that's something that an outreach person would typically do. Anybody can do it, but it's really best served for an outreach coordinator because that is what they do as part of their job day in and day out, which is one of the reasons why in this particular setting, the outreach person, which we don't have right now, they left in November, October, is a position that we're desperately trying to fill. For all of the reasons that I just mentioned, plus.
Have we thought about partnering with our other communities to fill the need for the Groveland residents? Because I went through this for somebody, and it's very difficult.
Yep. It's very, very difficult. You can partner with them to a degree, but it's very, which is why I've asked for what I've asked for. It's very time consuming, and you have to really dig in and sort through all of the finer details. You may work with one person, for an afternoon to get it started. You may spend 2.5 or 3 hours end to end with one person getting it completed. So in the outreach space, it's really important to have somebody who has the capacity to kind of navigate those conversations, whether they're emotional, financial to some degree, and is there consistency, because you may start the process on one day and come back the next day and finish it up. And that's not because the person can't do it. It is the nature of that work. Great question. Any other questions on the first slide? No? Okay. And then moving on to the second slide, this is the slightly revised budget proposal that I've put together based on some of the context that you saw on the first slide. I did put some rationale below the allocation just to kind of talk through. I think the big headline here for the budget is I want to ensure that we have transparency across the salary expenses in particular. We touched on it a little bit the last time that I was here. We do have some salary expenses for the assistant director coming out of various buckets. I think, over time, that has evolved to some degree, but I think it's important to get that on, the operational side of things. It also provides for simplified accounting, which I think is important. I've walked down to certain offices a few times just to, get clarification on, the different buckets and things like that. And then it also, by asking all of the salaries to be covered out of the operational budget, it allows us to use grants or, revolving accounts specifically for program expenses. So if the town budget is covering all of the salary expenses, then the kind of the evolution or the well-rounded program that I spoke about, I have a clean sort of operating budget, if you will, to do that. I think, so that's kind of my thinking there. And then on the outreach coordinator that I mentioned, I am asking if possible to get that hourly rate up to a bit more that's on par with what I know the other towns are paying. We've had very little interest except for maybe one or two interesting questions that have come through on the position. But we've had very little interest of it, and I think a lot of it has to do with that salary. And the job really is very complex. It is very time-consuming. I know that there was some initial discussions on why not making that full-time. My thought on that is, I would rather have the right person in there part-time and have them really get the right person, get them really engaged, and then have them grow with us over time. But I think it's important to find the right person. The van drivers, we are leaving that unchanged. And then on the expenses and the van expenses, there is an increase there, but this is based on actuals. So I spoke specifically on the regular expense line item. I spoke about My Senior Center. That is our CRM, if you will, for the department. It's our lifeline. We can't really live without it. I did a little bit of digging on that, and the cost for that, as well as the T-Mobile account, both of those represent the actual spend. Any kind of anomalies that were associated with My Senior Center are sunk costs. It's not coming back, and the actuals are based on the current contract for both T-Mobile and My Senior Center. And then the van expenses covers the average fuel spend that we're spending every month. I went and looked to see what we were spending in a variety of buckets. Again, I wanted to keep it very clean because I wanted to be able to track how much we're spending for fuel, because we track mileage and everything else. So it's not necessarily covering all of the van expenses, but it's allowing for very simplified accounting so that if asked, I can track some important metrics.
Thanks for that.
Sure,
I appreciate it.
no problem.
So is there an increase in hours for the outreach coordinator? From what to what?
It's a slight increase from 13 to 16 hours, and my hope is that with the 16 hours and the increased hourly rate, that I can get a candidate that's well qualified and have them here for peak time, meaning 10 to 2, 9:30 to 1:30, consistently Monday through Thursday. Again, so that if they can come back the next day, and then obviously in the space that I'm in and the community members that we're serving, Monday is a very important day because a lot of things happen over the weekend. And it's important to have somebody here during those times. So my hope is that with the increase in the salary and then that schedule consistently, that it would attract somebody who either has been in the field and is retired, or was in the field and maybe has some life changes, and that schedule is conducive to family and, serving the community at the same time.
So that grant money, now that if we put the real money, what it really costs for those employees, that grant money can be used in other areas?
Yeah.
Like paying for the T-Mobile, things like that?
No, I would use it. I really would like the operation expenses to be all funded out of the operational budget. And I would use the grant for programming additional services for example, additional services out of the pantry, programming events, things like that.
Okay.
We do a very good job, I think, with transportation-related programming, events, trips, and things like that. I think in order to increase our reach, we need to get I need to get a little bit more creative and diversify some of the programming, and that will free up the grant money to do that. And it also makes for very simplified reporting back on the grant as well. Here's what we did, here's what we spent, versus a piece of it, a little piece is going for here, a little piece is going here, a little piece is going here. It makes for a much better story of what we did to serve the community, a much stronger story in terms of serving the community. The T-Mobile account, since you brought that up, that's based on the department and confidentiality when they're on the van and they're with seniors on the van calling back into the office. We have My Senior Center is somewhat mobile optimized. I don't know that I would say it's fully usable on a phone, but we can check people in and take notes and do all that sort of thing through our CRM system on the phones while they're there. So that's why we have it. I'd be open to other options to decrease that spend, whether it's a department-wide plan of some sort, but that plan has been in place for a couple of years. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Questions at this point? Does anybody else?
I just appreciate the wealth of information. I think that's really great, and I think it makes it really helpful to make decisions based on having stuff like this.
Good.
So, thank you. Thank you
Sure.
for taking what I said and
Yeah,
rolling with it
sure.
on day 2.
No problem.
Yeah, this is nice.
And our new newsletter is out, so in your free time, take a look.
Perfect.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes.
That's great.
And is that comes through the mail? Is that posted?
It's also online. Yep, it's
Awesome.
online, and it's been sent to over 1,400 households and 60-plus in Groveland as of today.
I used to get it as being a member of the board. I don't know if
it's the-
I'd be happy to
maybe
get it
soon
online,
we'll-
though.
Yeah,
Get it emailed
it's
to me.
posted online, on the town website.
Copies at the library or here in the office, yeah.
Just one
I'll
line.
look at
Trying to
it
cut the
online, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just- But I'm excited to see the new look, so. And thank everybody for coming in, and
Thank you
thank
so much.
everybody for supporting that. I mean, it's so nice to see full, is the board full?
Yeah,
Yeah, one person's not here, but yeah, we're a full board and
That's great.
wonderful board.
We're not, we're jealous.
We've got a couple of vacancies. You need someone like Laurel. She's very good at recruitment.
she sure is.
We just want to say that we have Sean's back.
Yes.
That's why we're sitting behind you.
Are we gonna correct all the places where they have previous directors' names? Like, when I go on the TV, there's whoever, and then I go online, it's someone else. Sean, you need to
I haven't
get your
seen the
name in
TV, but on Friday, the
public access.
website,
Who controls the,
I can fix that, yeah.
Yeah.
so, yeah.
the website, the
This is a
town,
pet peeve of mine.
the town
Like,
website will be fixed. up.
Finance
A lot of the
committee
notices
bothers me,
say-
as we're a board.
Outdated names. And we should check everything, really. I mean, I think that there's some programming, I think there's the director, I think
Yeah.
that there's, I don't know if all of your instructors are still the same or not.
Most of them, yeah. We can look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say it's really welcome to see someone who's as engaged in their occupation as you seem to be.
I love it.
I don't think, in my opinion, we can ever do enough for the seniors. It's why we get to do what we do is because of what they sacrificed along the way. So it's nice to see someone as, again, as seemingly as engaged as you are, because I
Thank
think they deserve whatever they can get the best of.
That's what we're trying for. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great night. But you can leave them. You can leave them.
You can leave them. We'll
Just
clean
leave,
up.
we'll clein up. Just so there's less chatter while we're.
Is there a section for this? Is there a section like, does it go into,
Education.
oh, okay.
What is it that you have there anyway? All that shit there,
What shit?
the pile that she handed you.
This?
Yeah.
This is the budget in a PDF.
They won't give you the, yeah, so. They kill you. You went to the higher level.
No. We're gonna,
Greg is quite,
so in the essence of time,
but
to try and stay on, we should.
Can I get that PDF you sent? Because there's a program out there now that transfer this into Excel.
I will do that.
good luck with that.
Cool.
Okay.
So we should resume and go through, and then we
Sure.
need to talk about the next step in budget recommendations and meetings and
So the next section is insurance. You will see a large jump in the property and casualty insurance. That is attributed to multiple different factors, one of them being that we received the new rates from Maya, our insurance company. It also takes into consideration that our properties were, some of them were reappraised and valued higher, so that drove up the cost. From a professional liability standpoint, we have 2 pending cases, and we just received another new case. So as that develops, it's about $5,000 deductible for each individual case, so those need to be taken into consideration. We also have our easements and the insurance that we had to add for the community trail, as well as the need to cover our workers' compensation audit that is scheduled to occur in the next fiscal year to make sure that we are on path with that. The next one is our employee group life insurance. We have level funded that particular one. And then the last is the GIC, which we have increased to $613,000, and that's due to a 6% increase from last fiscal year, as well as budgeting in advance for any employees looking to join the GIC, particularly if we move forward and fund the firefighter positions, as well as there's 2 eligible employees that can join the health insurance and in enrollment period, and whether or not there's a life-changing event status. So we wanted to make sure that the number accurately reflected those potential new additions so that we didn't get ourselves into any trouble. Any questions on insurance?
So, the 613040, that's what I see on this page.
Mm-hmm.
And the other 1, 2, 3, 4 items add up to. The other 4 items add up to the 280, 260? Because I have 297, 588, so I'm confused.
Which one? Sorry. For the property casualty
The
insurance?
3,000
Yeah, this one is outdated.
minus 3.
Yes, that is correct.
So now it's 290.
How come I get 294, 295?
The 3,000 is a separate line item.
Yep. But if I had the 270, the 21,450,
And
and the 2489,
The original one has been updated
Yes.
to 293.
So the sheet that's in front in the section is incorrect. That's incorrect.
This one's correct inside the book.
Yes. The one in the front.
gotcha.
So then we would skip, we've done public safety, we've done building. Education is a separate discussion.
Veterans, do we need to do that? It's up to normal 2%.
Yeah, veterans.
Veterans just up to normal 2%.
Where is veterans?
Right here.
5.
Number 25.
Oh, I was looking at this.
Sorry.
It's at the bottom of human services, so the last page.
So for debt services?
No, veteran service.
Oh, veteran services.
It just went up the normal 2%.
Yes, the agent salary went up the 2%, and then the veterans benefit, there's one benefit, there's one individual who will be coming off those benefits, so we level funded them.
And where does the veterans benefit shift in the budget?
Where does the what from the budget? I'm sorry?
The veterans, the state's budget,
The state covers, what is it, 25%? Forget the
so that would go
breakdown.
into a reimbursement toward this bucket, this section, or is it separate?
That was mine, they cover the percent, like, I think it's the 25 or 70, I forget the percentage breakdown, but they cover a certain percentage of veteran benefits, or surviving spouses, and that is what is contributed towards the cherry sheet allocation, and then we have a set-aside allocation to cover fuel and other things, which is then offset by that additional revenue. That was my understanding.
So I was going by this sheet to see the next department, if that's fine. The education, we're going to not talk about right now. Rubbish would be next, which I think we've talked about. It's in the contract.
Yep, and we discussed it a little bit with the Board of Health, but it's the standard rates with the estimated tonnage that we're looking at.
Cemetery we reviewed, Board of Health we reviewed, Council on Aging, Library, debt service.
So for the debt services, I'm sure Michelle, we should have had Michelle. So we have the $225,000, which is the same as last year. We have the short-term principal that actually went down to $59,000. We have the long-term interest that went down to, that should be, the department requested is incorrect. It says the 77,338, it should be 82,963. So that went down from what was adopted in FY '23. The short-term interest is about level funded from last fiscal year at 3,000, and the administrative fees is 5,500, and that is because we received our latest invoices from Hilltop Securities that helps us with our borrowing, and they had increased their rates. So we needed to be able to pay them accordingly. And then also, anytime we do add any additional borrowing or bans or anything of that nature, they assist, and we are responsible for paying them for their time. And then the last one is the unclassified. So you'll see that the Essex County retirement contribution went up to $717,000. That was a little bit of an increase from last fiscal year. Those numbers are provided to us by the Essex County Retirement, so there's not much we can do. As the Water and Sewer Superintendent had pointed to, we did take an opportunity to take a closer look at the breakdown between the town, Water and Sewer, as well as the Light Department. We made some slight adjustments, and there was some movement, but nothing substantial, just smaller. So even what was added to the town side wasn't a big jump. We have the unemployment compensation that we level funded at 2,000. We do a good job at retaining our employees and making sure there's no issues there. For the Medicare tax, that went up a big chunk, mostly because of the fact that it's based upon the compensation that we offer. So we have to take that number and we have to multiply it by the percentage, and so there's nothing we can do. It's all based upon the wages. For the OPEB, we're just looking to do what we have historically done, add the $85,000. That will also add the free cash allocation into the budget to offset that cost. We have the sealers of weights and measures at $750. At the same time, we have a warrant article that we're proposing to make sure that we can collect the fees from those that we required, so that we can then pay that back, as Sam had mentioned at the building and department session. So I have it in there, but it might just be a precaution if something were not to pass, or if there is an issue. But the fees that we raise through that warrant article, if it hopefully passes, will go into paying that expense. So that might not be necessary. But until we see it accepted and work, we just kept it in there. The next is the Memorial Day services, which was level funded at $500. That's done by the Veterans Agent with flags that they post, that they put up. And then the street lighting is level funded at the $17,000, and that was confirmed with the manager over at GMLD.
Good. And then the other non-appropriated expenses are basically the same.
Those are more so warrant articles that were approved in the past that were there and raised revenue through, that we were accounting for.
Okay. Done. Yeah, by the time we get to the town administrator budgets, I feel like so much of it is what it is. So, okay, 7 o'clock. We should talk about the overall plan to work through, balance the budget, thoughts about the override, thoughts about our input and our, how we're going to come up with recommendations and how we're going to communicate that to the residents, and be open and transparent and available to answer questions and to share accurate information. So I guess we should,
So I guess the matter of urgency that comes into play, just if I may, is just the override number.
Yep.
So I think that we're all of the understanding that an override is going to be necessary. When the state released their revenue numbers, some of the initial correspondence from the superintendent over at the schools is that with those revenue numbers, they're still looking at a $1.6 million deficit within what they're proposing for their operating budget. Therefore, those numbers still resonate as we had talked about in the beginning. That being said, we cannot accommodate for that based upon the initial conversations as we discussed. All aside, I think that we can all agree that most of our departments that came to us were very reasonable with their requests in terms of what they're asking for. They're small budgets, $3,000, $2,000. We're not talking about line items that really exceeded anything beyond that. They were very, I think, mindful of that. So with that being said, the number that being provided by the school, we're not able to fund. And so the override number, well, we can play with the other numbers, and we have more time to play with the other numbers until the end of March before we have to get those finalized and on the warrant and posted in April so that we can meet the deadline for the posting. The override needs to be, the number needs to be defined, most likely, my understanding is by March 14th or 15th, because that needs to go onto the ballot. And so we need to get that number over to the town clerk so that can get all squared away. So that's why we have a really quick turnaround when we talk about the meeting that we're going to be having with the school and the school committee, providing their number on the 8th, on the 7th, and then the discussion on the 8th, so that we can then turn it around from the town's perspective, both Merrimack, Groveland, and West Newbury, and get whatever number, if one is required, over to the clerk so that that can get posted in a timely manner. So there's still matters that we have before us. Some of the warrant articles we'll need to go through. Again, the budget, some of the other line items we can definitely play with and go back and forth, but that will all affect whatever that number is and that override number is. And that's why, as you said, I think that's one of the areas that the finance board should focus on in terms of what direction they're thinking about for moving forward on that.
so do we know what number that the school committee is going to vote on? Do we think that we know what their proposal is going to be?
So based upon what they're saying, they're saying that they're still looking at about approximately a $1.67 million shortfall in their operating budget that would then need to be reallocated based upon the student enrollment for Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury. For Groveland, we have 39%. So when you take that 1.67 million and you do the math, you're going to
Get $651,300. Give or take. What's a couple of hundred between friends, right?
So there's two things that we need to think about. We need to think about how we come up with that number for the school, and we need to think about how we really want to go about looking at our own town budget and hearing, we did put forth the wage and classification study. Where are the thoughts there as far as priorities, how we're going to implement that, how we're going to try to accommodate that this year and/or over time? and what sort of resources do we need for that to happen?
Do you
I
have a-
think we
do-
need a committee
Oh.
outside this group to look at, it's just a suggestion, to look at how we're gonna handle the
Yep.
study. Because right now, we're doing a lot of talking, but we're not really doing anything. So I don't know what the position is, but we're gonna have to give these people more money, some of them. So we can't do it this budget year, I don't think. But something's gotta happen. It's gotta be, why bother doing the study if we're not gonna act on it?
So I
don't
would,
think that's the expectation. I think the expectation is that we do want to act on it. And I think that the expectation is that we need more resources in order to do that.
Money.
And if the school's going to ask for money that we don't have, then we need to step back and say, what's the bigger picture? What do we need to fund the school, to fund our operations? 2.5% isn't cutting it. Everybody in the community hears it. Everybody in the community feels it. The good thing is that we had, full boards. We have engaged, involved citizens. So hopefully there's a component of the community that sees it and understands it and can help say, this is real. And I think that just taking some highlights and saying, health insurance goes up by this much, the school budget goes up by this much. We've been working really hard, we've been patient, we've been asking. We know that the school building override was a big ask for people, and we've been buying time, and we put a town administrator in place, and now we need to make the next step in planning and establishing ourselves, that we need to know exactly what's that going to be. And sure, if a subcommittee of this group wants to get together and really crunch the numbers and work through and say, this is where we think we need to go, we've got limited time. We're always chasing numbers and chasing time. But I guess I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to say, what's the magic number? Where are we going to, how do we want to implement this? Where do we need to go, and how do we need to get there?
Well, I will say, based upon the conversation that we had at the last finance board meeting and some of what Jim was saying in terms of what he's saying right now, I tried to take a closer look at the Collins study and put together a potential option of moving forward. My main goal was really to take people out of it. And I think that the study showed that our base for our employees is off. And what my goal was is to establish that new base. And what does that new base look like, and what we could potentially afford that wouldn't overtask what our budget has. Obviously, there are restraints, but essentially the way that I had approached it was to, again, remove names, seniority, longevity, all of those different factors, and just focus on the positions themselves. We took the proposed average that was put into the salary study and the proposed median, and what those different, how far off we were, whether it was $1 by some, $15 by others, and we tallied those up to get a total. And so trying to get everybody where they were in the proposed average and trying to get everybody where they were in the proposed median. And so we took a look at the numbers, we added those up, and then we took a look at what we are currently funding or proposing to fund in our FY24 budget. So essentially, everybody had a 2% increase. So we did not take a look at any contractual employees, and we did not take a look at any union employees, but we took a look at all non-union contract employees. So we took their current FY24 budgeted 2%, and then we added what was necessary as part of the average or the median, and we got a total. So then, based upon what we were looking at, we said to ourselves, okay, well, we have a budget, and everybody has their needs within the budget. So the thought process was, so if the school is constantly needing, about $1 million every year in order to fund their operation and their growth, that we would just see what happened if we level funded it. So we level funded the school budget and put it into our spreadsheet for what the department requested budget was, and we got a leftover number of about $247,000. So giving everybody the 2%, giving everybody the expenses that they were looking for, the smaller increases, making sure that all of our contractual obligations were honored, as well as our union negotiations were all in place. We then took that number and we subtracted it from the lower of the average and median number to get a percentage. And then we took that percentage and then we applied it across the board. And we were able to give people increases based upon that formula. So it took, some of them get more, and those are the positions that needed more in order to be brought up to where they needed. Others needed less. And so essentially, again, not taking people or anything into consideration other than the position and where they fell on a third-party independent study showing that other communities and their peers offered them this based upon a comparable formula for population and other factors. So that was looking at about $243,468 in addition that would need to be added to the budget. But that doesn't fund the school, and therefore whatever the assessment for the school would be the override.
Do you have a number you want to use
A number that I want to use.
for the override? If you've done this much work, it leads me to believe you've probably done that too.
Well, so based upon the initial information that we received from the school, it's looking like we'll need to have, that 1.1, so $1,150,628. Excuse me, $1,150,628. And then all of the budget and all of the operation side is funded.
So that 1 million plus is, it not include the school?
It does
rate.
not
So this
include
is
the
just
assessment.
The town that's a good idea. Now, you have a number of some sort, maybe that has to be tweaked, but the question becomes, how do we implement that? Is it a big bang? Is it, I don't know.
What do you, I don't understand the question. I'm sorry, a big.
Well, what will we go to town meeting with? We go with anything on the wage adjustments, or are we gonna, yeah?
Absolutely. If you're gonna do it, you do
I
it.
say
You do
we
it.
should do it now.
You do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at that number, so if you were to take a look at what the tax impact would be on the residents, you can put it into the tax impact calculator, and you'll get about, yes, you'll get about 83 cents added to your tax rate, for a total tax rate of $13.96, and you're looking for about a $400 increase on a whole, $100 every quarter, about $30 every month that you would be adding to the taxpayers.
That's reasonable.
So, and then what the biggest thing, and what I think is a lot of times when you're thinking about it from a grand scheme of things, is that you need to raise the additional revenue. The revenue is not there to support the services, and it's not there to support the school. So if we're continuing to be asked to add $1 million to the school budget every year, it doesn't exist without cutting substantially. Like, even if you were to take a look, like, if you take that number and level fund the school, we only have $247, $100,000. That's it. That's all we have extra, not even funding the assessment. The money is not there. So where does the money come from? It comes from our departments. It comes from us saying, you don't get an extra staff person. You only get a 2%. We understand you're underpaid. We understand you don't have this. You can't have this expense. You need to share this. And everybody has come to the table and said, yes, we'll share this. We'll do the supplies. We'll make a supply room. We'll cut here. We'll cut there. But now we continue to have to be asked to do less, and now that we've done the wage classification study, people are like, we love Groveland, we want to be in Groveland, we want to do what we need to do for Groveland, but you keep taking away our expense line items in order to do our job, and now you're telling us that we don't get where we need to be with our counterparts. You know, we have staff recruitment issues too, and these people are experiencing inflation when they go to the grocery store too. And it's all the same. And so I think that it's something that the board might want to take into consideration if they would like to do that. I think in any way, shape, or form, the revenue is not there to support both. And so an override in any way, shape, or form that you want to put it, whether it's this way or a different way, open to many different ideas, you're going to need one, 100%.
We gotta do the right thing.
And you're saying the $1.1 million does not include the school?
Right,
So with the school, you're looking at 1.8, 1.7,
yeah.
2 million?
With that's just the Pentucket assessment, because the Whittier assessment went down and the Essex one was level funded.
Right, so if I add, say, the 650 to the 1.1, I'm at 1.7, bounded, let's say 2 million.
She's basically saying like level fund the school.
So it's-
So anything that the school is asking for beyond last year is what the override will be, which is the 1.15.
Okay, so it's the school and the operational together.
Well, we're putting,
But you're putting
we're
it all on the
using the, if we
Using
were
our
previously going to
increase
say we
towards
were
our
gonna
own
give a
operations.
3% or a 2% to the school, we're saying, no, we need that in the operational area. So we're level funding the school, and whatever the school needs beyond that would be the override amount.
So
That's
it's-
what that scenario
So it's the
says.
1.15.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't think it's gonna be that easy.
Well, so I think that goes back to the email I sent, that I wanted to discuss tonight was, I've seen it already. I've seen the lack of information that's, not the lack of information, let me take that back, I apologize. It's, how do I want to say this without sounding mean?
It's information.
I think it's the misinformation. I think people think it's going to be, and I don't want to make it less than, right? Because I understand that some people, $100 to their budget for the year is a lot of money, right? I don't want to say that. But I think people also think it's going to be thousands to their home budget, and they're saying, like, I can't do that. So I get that concern. But I think as a finance board, I would like us, as much as we can, to put out factual information. If that's something we put out as a online thing, or we have a meeting after we've set all the numbers and have a public meeting where they come and they can ask questions or voice concerns, or we can give them factual, helpful information to make an informed decision, right? If they vote yes or no, but it's an informed decision, that's what we want, no matter what. At least that's what I want.
No, and I agree, and I think, the school is doing everything they can to also make that be the case from their viewpoint, because I know, yes, they're inviting us back in, but they're also going to the schools and going to PTA meetings and gonna be talking to the parents to give the information directly. And I think that's the united front we all have to take, that, the 2.5% that we're subject to and allowed to increase is just not cutting it. And it hasn't been, but we've made it work. But now we're at the point where we can't make it work anymore.
We're out of that.
There's no,
There's
there's
just
out of
nowhere else
juice,
for
out
us
of
to say,
time.
take it from here.
Prop
to move
2.5
here.
was a good idea 30 years ago.
But not very well thought out, as
And the
usual.
state mandates things to us, and outside of 2.5. So, and insurance companies and on and on and on. So 2.5 is like, yeah, okay. We need to know the minimum to run this town. And if the minimum says to do it right, we should ask for $1.5 million, but we're going to ask for, $1 million or 900,000. We need to be honest about this. I mean, and we've lived off the backs of our employees long enough. And they're good people. I mean, we don't have a lot of people, okay? So I don't know where you can cut, okay? You can cut some hours in places, but you can't.
You're already cut to the bone.
We're to the bone, I mean.
Well, now you lack services, right? Now
You're gonna take away services.
You're gonna take away services, and
You're gonna
that's-
take police officers off the street. You're gonna take firemen off.
Well, I think that's the
calls.
next, I think that's the next part of the conversation, and maybe we would just be a recommending board, maybe it's the Board of Selectmen that would make the actual decision, but I think that we need to also put into context what the priorities, what the recommended priorities are, and if, what could be at stake, what could be at risk if we don't have the funding that we need. And, you know,
People should understand the
is it trash?
consequences.
Is it firefighters? Is it,
The trash alone is gonna be more than $30 a month, so if you,
Right.
would have to pay for that yourself now, it's.
right, what services will be at risk? Just so that decision makers can have,
An informed, educated opinion on how they need to handle their own personal decisions.
Right.
The clarity, I'm all for the transparency that the school has provided. I mean, they've gone above and beyond, in my opinion, in trying to create the transparency by holding public meetings,
Yep.
sharing the information right down to the, the red penny, right? And I think that's all we can do. I mean,
so, right, so in the, sorry, you were
no,
done. So in the essence of time, it's almost 7:30. We have a meeting on the 8th,
Next Wednesday, yeah.
a week from tonight, at 6 o'clock at the school. We can set it for 5 o'clock and have a follow-up of this. Maybe, if we want to ask, we can make a formal vote, but if you want to put those numbers into into context and show us what those medians are and how we may balance the budget, then we can have that as a working document to review next Wednesday, a week from today. That would be one thing to consider. And then consider our next steps. We could create, if anybody wants to be more involved during the week, if anybody has, more flexible time, more flexible schedule, if anybody wants, if we want to create a subcommittee or appoint a couple representative of us to work with Rebecca on some thoughts, a sub-quorum committee so that we can just keep this moving, because there's a lot of moving parts, there's tight deadlines, but we had to wait to get information, we had to wait to get the state information, we had to review the budgets, and now we need to put it together in a hurry, so.
call me crazy, but I love crunching numbers. I don't know why. I mean,
Yeah, I do too.
I can definitely send you over the spreadsheet that we put together, and you're welcome to tear it apart and make any suggestions, edits, comments, or anything of that nature. So I'll send it to you as the chair, and maybe you can disperse it through the committee.
I'll forward
Sure.
that. And then, do we want to set our next meeting for 5 o'clock? So we
We'd
can,
have to talk fast. We'd have to talk fast, because it's really a 45-minute meeting.
Right, because then we have to drive over there.
So you could
Um,
make it at
we could make it there.
4:30.
Do it there?
Not everyone will be able to make that, but
We could,
killing me at 5 already.
just do it.
Take a sick day.
I was kind of thinking we were going to meet there, but maybe that's,
Well, can we? I guess I think that's the question I would like to ask, is if we can get access to the building at 5 and have a meeting there, then we don't have to,
We can meet over there.
yeah, if we can do that, then set the meeting there, and then
We've
we
done
can.
that.
Logistically, it
Go
makes
in the
much more
gym or
sense.
something.
It
sit
does
on
make
the
much more
bleachers.
Get you down
sense.
to a 30-minute meeting now if we have to move from here to there.
It is, yes.
yeah. So
So what
5
time do we meet?
5
5.
o'clock at,
5
The
at the
school.
school?
Yeah,
All right.
that will be our next official meeting time.
sure.
I need a
Um,
drink.
And until then, we will, I'll send those numbers around. We can all
Yeah.
give it some
It
thought.
sounds, for what Rebecca was saying, she's already worked up some numbers.
That's right.
And we can look at those.
What we need is context,
Yep.
numbers, options, and
Well, I'd like to see
Support.
one set of numbers.
Well, I think we can all help ourselves in that case. People are gonna come up, they're gonna ask us, be forthcoming, be truthful, be honest, this is what it is. You know, don't try to sugarcoat it, it is what it is, okay? And be transparent, and try to get the correct information out there as much as possible, talk to as many people as you can, try to control the narrative so that they understand this is the truth, this is what's going on. If you don't trust me, here's the facts. Go look them up for yourself.
Right.
We can help ourselves in that avenue.
Agreed.
And then we have our meeting on the 8th, and we'll regroup after that as far as how and when we will try to continue creating and communicating a message. Does that sound like the best we can do?
Fantastic.
Was there anything else on the agenda? Are we redirected, reset?
No, no.
Do you have anything else?
Did you have any other informational updates?
I don't believe so, not that I can think of.
It's a good summary. Congratulations, and thank you very much. I think what we really need is that the big picture bubbled down to a bottom line, what this actually means to our taxpayers. I can see my hands flapping away on the other screen like 5 seconds
Yeah,
later, and it's
it's
so
not-
distracting.
You're
I'm
like, "Who is
distracting
that?"
myself. So, okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:29 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank
Skip it over,
you,
Ruby.
everybody.
Further discussion?